У меня на глазах, короче...
Куда ездил?
Мародерить ездил.
Куда?
Мародерить.
А что у нас по новостям? Да нихуя, воюет, да и все.
Я сейчас заебался, а тут золото есть.
Поэтому даже ни капельки сожаления нет.
Охуеть.
Духи какие здесь нашел, блять, вкусные, нахуй пиздец. У меня квартира целая в кармане лежит.
Да. Да. Все бери. Что нужно?
Только кожа слезает.
Дома грабим, ебаный в рот, чтобы пожрать, блядь.
И вот нахуй говорят, там мирные деньги.
Это называется 21 рожа на теле.
Let's get the sound right. Thank you very much. Welcome everybody at the opening event of the exhibition Russian War Crimes. This is an exhibition that was first shown in Davos during the World Economic Forum, and at that exhibition we showed these images, the film that you will see later, in what was formerly known as the Russian House. Today we are proud to be able to show this here in the center of Europe, in Station Europe, hosted by the hub, Ukrainian Civil Society Hub. And of course, thank you, Your Excellencies, for being all here. Welcome, and I will look. Welcome, first of all, Madam President. It's a pleasure to have you here. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for being here. Mr. Pinchuk, thank you for being here. Mr. Reinders, thank you for being here. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for being here. And now, without further ado, the first person that I would like to present to you is speaking to us from Kiev. He is the head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, Mr. Yermak. And I think we will now see Mr. Yermak on the screen. Mr. Yermak, welcome. We can see and we can hopefully hear you. The floor is yours.
Good evening, Madam President, Mr. Prime Minister, Your Excellencies, dear ladies and gentlemen. True freedom, it's nothing but justice. There, it's no justice, there no freedom. The German poet Johann Gottfried Saying knew his from personal experience. But history teaches that this formula is also valid for the nations. Freedom and justice always walk side by side. Today, we Ukrainians are fighting for our freedom, and we want justice. But want is justice, it's not victory for those who defend their land. What is justice if not punishment for those who have come to take it away? Without justice, without these punishments for the aggressors, the world will not be free. Fear will reign over it. And because of this fear, evil will become stronger. So the world needs justice. At the scale of Russian war crimes in Ukraine, it's outstanding. Since February 24, Ukrainian law enforcement officers have recorded over 40,000 crimes related to Russian aggression. More than 26,000 of them are war crimes. And this is only the data that we already know. Daily shellings of the peaceful neighborhoods, mass murders, torture and the rape, mass deportation to Russia. We still have incomplete pictures of Russian invaders' crimes in the occupied territories. So far, we know some facts only. For example, that we burn or cover the concrete numerous bodies of our civilians to hide the evidence. We still don't know exactly how many tens of the thousands of Mariupol city resistance was killed by Russian shells, bombs, and rockets. How many died due to the lack of the medicines and food while the city was blocked, and how many there tortured to the death of simply shoot. And this each step of our soldiers, eastwards and southwards, with each village or city they liberate, we are preparing for the terrible news. We are afraid that a new tragedy will get known. We are afraid that the world will have to learn new names, new words, scarier than Bucha. So I will not talk about our death toll just because it will by definition by greatly underestimate. But I will tell you about what shocks me the most, about how Ukrainian children suffers. They were supposed to start the new school year last week, but many could not do it. Almost 400 of our children have died in the hands of the Russian occupiers, and over 700 have been injured. 270 schools have been completely destroyed by Russian shelling. 2,405 educational institutions have been damaged by now. And are obviously not the final numbers. Can you imagine the scale? Russia is terrorizing Europe with the artificial energy crisis and trying to create a food crisis. Now this terrorist state is blackmailing us all in the nuclear disasters, shelling the largest nuclear power plants in Europe, and disrupting its work. There is a specific persons behind these crimes. On the hand, there are direct executors, Russian soldiers and the officers. Those who have raped and murdered, those who have given and executed criminal orders. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. The main culprits are those who have started this terrible war against Ukraine. The skeptics repeat phrases about seeming impossibility of bringing them to the justice. They are talking about the impossibility of executing the court verdict. But in the meantime, they remind us that the last trials of these scales were held as far back as 1945. Was there Nuremberg and Tokyo tribunals? So history is in our sides. The hand of justice can reach out to the executioners of the nations. The war with Russia is waging against Ukraine is the largest act of the armed aggression in Europe since 1945. And the civilized world should give it in a fair assessment. If we do not to do it together, Moscow will indelibly try to repeat it again and again. Regimes of this kind cannot stop themselves. Inability to punish Russia will mean the right of the forced triumph of the other force of law. Everywhere in unpunished Russia will show other potential aggressors. It's possible. You can commit any crimes against humanity. You just need to be strong enough. You just need weapons of mass destruction. No matters if it is oil or nuclear warhead. What next? The world will get in the abyss of lawlessness. Evil must be punished. And to this end, international law must work. Our goal is a fair trial and legal retribution. Time will tell how it will be happening. But justice cannot be stopped. The very fact of the International Special Tribunal preparing, inducted and assuming arrest warrants will be an important step toward our goal. The more active and united we all are, faster we will achieve the result. Speaking about Russia's responsibility, we mean it's been twofold. The responsibility of states and the responsibility of the Russian individuals, citizens. The United Nations International Court of Justice, the European Court of Human Rights, and arbitration can determine states' responsibility. And here, Ukraine, it's already working. In particular, for the office of the General Prosecutor. The International Criminal Court in The Hague can prosecute the genocide crimes against humanity and the war crimes. But it's also important for us to ensure the individual's responsibility of Russian leadership for the most serious initial crimes, the crime of aggression. It is often called, like a mother of the all crimes, the supreme international crime. This is a crime that is absorbed all the other international crimes, accumulate evil of the world. Ukraine initiate and has been working for the almost half of the year of the creation of the International Special Tribunal, which will try all the top leaders of the Russian Federation for the military aggression against our state. It is this tribunal what should announce suspicions to key representatives of the Russian government, issue warrants for their detention and pass legal sentences. Proving the fact of the crime aggressions committed against Ukraine will be the base for the sentence. It could be either life imprisonment and significant prison terms, and the actual execution of the sentence will take place as soon as the defendant appear on the territory of the states they joined the treaty on the establishment of the International Special Tribunal. There are the days to do this. Either international agreements between Ukraine and other states, or agreements with the United Nations, or agreement with the European Union, or the Council of Europe. On September 14, a political decision of the Cabinet Minister of the Council of Europe regarding joint support for the creation of the Special International Tribunal is expected. I'm sure it will be a significant step toward justice. I call on the Council of Europe, do not hesitate and fight resolutely and on the side of good. Russia has carried out all types of the aggression specified in United Nations General Assembly Resolution 3314 or 1974. Therefore, in judgment can be adopted several months after the start of court work. Why do certain European officials do not want actively work of the creation of the International Special Tribunal? What do they delay of the creation? Some of them maybe believe that what they keeping away for the negotiation with Russia. Some are trying to convince that the International Criminal Court in The Hague is enough. However, it's not the case. First, Ukraine actively cooperated with the International Criminal Court. The creation of International Special Tribunal regarding the crime of the Russian aggression against Ukraine will not affect the investigation of the International Criminal Court. It will only complete his work. Secondly, Russia has violated all basic international rules by which the world has lived since the World War II. The reaction of the international community to the Russian aggression against Ukraine in 2014 turned out to be extremely mild, and the mindless can entitle the full-scale Russian invasion now. The lack of proper punishment for such large-scale crimes will indelibly lead to new, no less bloody war. It's time to correct all mistakes. We must create a wild complex of the institution that will establish a new international security system. The International Special Tribunal is the first step of this path. This should be followed by international agreements on security guarantees for Ukraine, unification of the sanction against the aggressor, and reform of key international institutions. No one will be escape responsibility, no matter how big and strong the aggressor states may seem. One of the Britain's best minister of the 19th century, Benjamin Disraeli, said, "Justice, it's truth in action. It is our duty to act, constantly fight for justice, for the freedom of humanity to choose the future without fears." Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Yermak, for these very important words. Now it's my honor to ask the President of the European Parliament, Madam President Metsola, to come forth to address.
Thank you very much, dear Prime Minister Shmihal, dear Commissioner Reinders, dear ambassadors, dear Andriy Yermak, dear Viktor Pinchuk, distinguished guests. It is a pleasure for me to welcome you today to the European Parliament's Station Europe for the opening of the exhibition of Russian war crimes by the Pinchuk Art Center. Our Station Europe is a symbolical building. It bridges Europe to the House of European Democracy, and since March, it has also been home to the Ukrainian Civil Society Hub, a place where Ukrainians can meet and coordinate activities in support of Ukraine and in support of democracy. I would like to start by congratulating the organizers for putting together this heartbreaking, and I invite you all to look at the pictures and see how important such an exhibition is. A collection of images that display the atrocities of war in Ukraine and the cruelty of Putin's regime. The destruction, civilian suffering, the deadening silence that follows the detonation of bombs, the mass killings in Bucha and other Ukrainian cities will leave no visitor indifferent. These photographs bear testimony to the sacrifice of Ukrainians in the name of our collective freedom. In March, the International Court of Justice declared Putin's war illegal, and ordered the immediate suspension of its military operations in the territory of Ukraine. This order has binding effect on Russia under international law. In March as well, the European Court of Human Rights called on the Russian government to stop all military attacks against civilians and civilian objects and to ensure the immediate safety of medical establishments and personnel in Ukraine. Russia's cowardly response was to withdraw from the jurisdiction of the European Court of Human Rights. Ukraine did not step down. Instead, it lodged a formal request to the court against Russia, a rare procedure designed to establish human rights violations. Prime Minister Shmyhal, as we spoke this morning, I want to assure you that the European Parliament will not turn a blind eye to these horrific acts on your country, on your people. We stand firmly with our Ukrainian friends and will do whatever it takes to bring the perpetrators of these crimes to justice. This House will continue to be one of the biggest supporters for setting up a special international tribunal to hold Putin, Lukashenko, Russian political and military leaders, commanders and soldiers, every single perpetrator accountable for the acts of aggression. And we also stand ready to provide all the necessary human and budgetary resources and administrative, investigative and logistical support to this effect. We fully endorse the investigation launched by the International Criminal Court prosecutor into war crimes and crimes against humanity by Putin's regime. We also believe that assistance should be provided to the Ukrainian Prosecutor General for the collection of evidence. Dear friends, Putin wants a future where iron curtains are drawn closed, where might is right, and where personal liberty and dignity are denied. With their actions, it is clear that Russia wants a return to a past that we had consigned to history books, a past where Europe's geographical integrity and Europe's freedom to choose with whom to cooperate and how to integrate is called into question. The real target is democracy, freedom, and truth, because our way of life is seen as a threat to autocracy. That is a past we can never, ever return to. So we will bring these criminals to justice for Ukraine, for Europe. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Madam President. And now I might ask the Prime Minister of Ukraine, Prime Minister Shmyhal, to take the floor.
Dear Roberto, dear Mr. Andriy Yermak, head of the office, dear Victor, dear Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, ambassadors, colleagues, dear friends, partners, Ukrainians. First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizers for this initiative and also would like to office of the President of Ukraine for kind support in launching today's exhibition. I'm very grateful for a possibility to speak here at the launch of this exhibition here in Brussels, which is a painful evidence of the war crimes committed in Ukraine and also forms the evidentiary base. It shows the reality of the war, of this bloody war that is aimed not only denying Ukrainian statehood, it is aimed not only at taking over Ukrainian lands, but the purpose of this war is to destroy Ukrainians as a people, as a nation. We're meeting at the Ukrainian hub of Ukrainian civil society, and this is the building that was kindly provided to the Ukrainian community by the European Parliament. This is one of the tokens of the fact that the European Parliament is standing by Ukraine in this full-scale war. The entire world is shocked by the brutal crimes committed by the Russians in Bucha. Hundreds of people tortured, killed, young and old, boys and girls, women and men, people defenseless, killed. in a most brutal way. And after that, there were many other towns and places, thousands of tragedies, thousands of cases of marauding, rape, mined bodies of the deceased. Russia keeps on shelling commercial centers, public transport facilities, residential buildings, residential quarters, and it seems that the Russians are aiming at increasing the number of killed and injured and wounded due to the combat activities. And we're still trying to understand how many children were taken away from Ukraine by the Russians. We still do not know how many Ukrainian citizens are being kept in filtration camps. But this is an exhibition of many photographs taken all over Ukraine. This is just a snapshot of the war crimes committed by Russia. We need to disclose all of these crimes, and all the perpetrators should be brought to justice. All murderers should be brought to justice. Every person that committed tortures should know that such people do not go unpunished. But all crimes, all such crimes should be punished. So we should punish those who started the war. We should punish those who gave an order to destroy the country, to destroy Ukrainian as people. And of course, we're speaking about the Russian authorities. And the Russian authorities, the Russian leaders have been inciting hatred against us, against our country, against independence. And finally, they gave orders to destroy our cities, to kill our people, to kill our women, to kill our children. Therefore, we need to establish mechanisms that will help us to investigate and prosecute the crimes of aggression committed by the Russian leadership against Ukraine, and therefore it is important to set up a special international tribunal on investigation of the crime of aggression against Ukraine. It must provide for just and lawful punishment of all those who started this history of a catastrophe and tragedy that has become the largest war in Europe after World War II. And the establishment of such a tribunal will help us to bring to justice the top officials from the Russian Federation. This special tribunal shall complement the work of the International Criminal Court that is also investigating the crimes of genocide and the war crimes committed against civil population.
Well, I trust we'll bring the perpetrators to justice for all the crimes committed. I would like to thank the European Parliament for this exhibition and the organisers of the exhibition. Glory to Ukraine.
Thank you very much. I just learned that Prime Minister has to leave at once. So thank you for being present here and giving us your words. And now, thank you very much. And now it's my honor to introduce the founder of the Pinchuk Center, the Viktor Pinchuk Foundation, and also the Yalta European Strategy, Viktor Pinchuk.
Madam President, Commissioner, Mr. Chief of Staff of President, if you are still with us, ambassadors, friends, my name is Viktor Pinchuk. I'm a Ukrainian businessman. For me, as for all Ukrainians, it's a great honor to help as I can to my country to defend itself. Almost for 6 years, I was involved in the creation of memorial of Holocaust in Babi Yar in Kiev, when during 2 days in September 1941, exactly 81 years ago, German Nazi committed genocide against Ukrainian Jews. During 2 days, 34,000 Ukrainian Jews were killed. And we created this memorial with the idea that this tragedy has never happened again, with the idea, never again. And since February 24 this year, when we witnessed this terrible genocide of Russians against Ukrainian people, we understood never again didn't work. And we changed our paradigm, our strategy, our understanding. Now we're not fighting for never again. Now we're fighting for stop now. And with this understanding, we try to create something which will tell this story loudly and widely. And that's why, together with the Office of President, with a strong cooperation, with a partnership with the Office of President, we decided to create this exhibition about Russian war crime. First exhibition was shown in May during World Economic Forum in the Russian house. For many years it was Russian house, and we transformed it to Russian war crimes house. And more than 85% of all media which covered World Economic Forum told story about Russian war crime house. And now we decided to show this exhibition in Brussels. And just we're next to institution of European Union for Ukrainians. This is almost like one of the main symbol of values which they are fighting for. That's why for us important to show this in Brussels. For me it's now very depressing to see that unfortunately now we have much more images, much more dramatic, tragical, very powerful images compared with what was shown in May. And I'm afraid that for next exhibition we'll have more and more proofs of this crime. Dear friends, we believe that this exhibition will help us to be strong, to remain strong, because it shows what we have to defend together and what we are fighting for together. In this war, there are many fronts. Of course, main front is military, but cultural front is also very important, and we believe this exhibition will contribute to our victory. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pinchuk. And now I would like to introduce the European Commissioner for Justice, Commissioner Reinders.
Thank you, Madam President, dear Roberta. Mr. Pinchuk, first of all, congratulations for this exhibition, and congratulations to receive this exhibition in this building. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to say that the human death toll in Ukraine is worsening day by day. Those who are responsible for the atrocities being committed in Ukraine must be held accountable. And the Commission attaches the highest importance to the effective investigation and prosecution of the war crimes committed in Ukraine. Impunity shall not be tolerated. The European Union's immediate attention and efforts focus on supporting domestic accountability mechanisms. In line with the principle of complementarity, the central role lies then with the Ukrainian prosecution services and courts. The Commission also continues to support the International Criminal Court, the ICC, as the leading international actor in the field of international criminal justice. The prosecutor of the ICC, Mr. Karim Khan, who is with us today via video, has already launched investigations, and we count on the court to determine the appropriate responsibilities for the unfolding events in Ukraine. At the same time, there are ongoing investigations in the European Union. 14 member states have already opened their own investigations into core international crimes. To strengthen coordination between these efforts, I had the honor to co-chair the Ministerial Ukraine Accountability Conference in The Hague on 14th of July, together with Chief Prosecutor of the ICC and the Dutch Minister of Foreign Affairs. The conference was an opportunity to start a wider coordination with all the relevant actors and to share thoughts on how to ensure that the atrocities of this war are accounted for. It was stressed that accountability and upholding the law are crucial for maintaining a rule-based international order and to deter other autocratic leaders from similar actions. Participating states emphasize that there is an urgent need to collect evidence and improve coordination. Good cooperation between the Ukrainian authorities, the ICC, and other states conducting investigations is crucial. Eurojust, the EU Agency for Criminal Justice Cooperation, and Europol, the EU Agency for Law Enforcement Cooperation, play a crucial and complementary role here. I welcome that in March, with Eurojust support, Lithuania, Poland, and Ukraine have swiftly set up a joint investigation team. Estonia, Latvia, and Slovakia also joined later. It is also the first time ever that the International Criminal Court is participating in an EU-level joint investigation team, and we have also a good collaboration with our US colleagues for the good functioning of this team. And the Commission continues to encourage other member states to also join the JIT. The Commission values and supports the activities of Eurojust, bringing together prosecutors from all member states and several associated states, including Ukraine, to work side by side. We need to be aware and prepare for it to take time to hold those responsible to justice. Therefore, it is important to preserve and analyze evidence for future trials. That is why, at the end of April, the Commission proposed an urgent amendment to the Eurojust regulation to allow the agency to store, analyze, and exchange evidence related to war crimes. The European Parliament and the Council approved the amendment in record time. In less than 1 month and a half, it's a record, it's true. We will hear more about it later today, since the President of Eurojust, Ladislav Amran, is joining us also via Visio. The collection and storage of evidence must respect procedural rules to ensure its admissibility. But in the context of war crimes, it is also closely linked to the protection of witnesses and victims. It is important that during the gathering of testimonies, the well-being of victims and witnesses is given priority to ensure, in particular, that they are not traumatized again. My services are in close contact with the Ukrainian liaison prosecutor to have regular updates on the needs of the Ukrainian Prosecutor General Office for the investigation and prosecutions of war crimes. I'm looking, of course, forward to continuing this efficient coordination with Prosecutor General Kostin. We are lucky to have him with us today online. And I want again to repeat that the Commission is supporting all your efforts to bring the perpetrators of these crimes to justice at the national level, at the international level. I said that we are working with the ICC. We are also open to discuss with you about the special tribunal to see what are the perspectives, and you know that there are also discussions with the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. And of course, it's very important to try to use all the possible tools to have a real accountability is our goal for the next days, the next weeks, the next months, but also, if it's needed, the next years. Thank you very much.
Voilà. Now I would like, we will continue with the conference in something like 10 minutes, but before the conference will start with Commissioner Reinders already said some of the guests, I invite you to watch a film. The film is made by a Ukrainian artist. His name is Oleksiy Sai, and we invited him to work with these incredible amount of images that were verified, and we have here 4,683 images in an 8-minute film. It is quite tough to watch, but I think it's important as it shows you reality in Ukraine. And you will hear voices, you will see subtitles, and these are the voices of Russian soldiers who are calling home, who spoke about the atrocities that
Да.
Ну какой русский человек не сопрет?
Блять, сука, и вот так всю ночь, весь день, нахуй.
Так ты хотел туда, на войну, вот и поехал.
Бля, ну там реально пизда, нахуй, что, бля, все таскаешь. Ноутбуки, телевизоры, блядь, хат, нахуй. Все, абсолютно, вообще все выносят, короче, дебилы и базы.
Куда они это складывают?
Куда ездил?
Мародерить ездил.
Куда?
Мародерить.
Да.
У меня квартира целая в кармане лежит.
Куда они это складывают? Да.
У меня квартира целая в кармане лежит.
Зачем ты вернулся? Титана. Я ебал нахуй.
Да какой русский человек не сопрет ничего, ты чё? Куда ездил?
Мародерить ездил.
Куда?
Мародерить.
Блинчики даже вчера жарили, нахуй.
Куда они это складывают? Да.
Три бидона брашки вчера нашли. Для этого нас было примерно этого самогона, блядь. У меня квартира целая в кармане лежит.
Куда они это складывают? Да.
Когда же они уже там нахуй успокоятся, ебаный хорой.
У нас тут, знаешь, мама, у меня на глазах, короче...
Куда ездил?
Мародерить ездил.
Куда?
Мародерить.
А что нас по новостям? Да нихуя, воюет, да и все.
Я сейчас заебался, а тут зол слезть.
Я вообще не понимаю, нихуя. Не пошел, знаешь, такой рот. Поэтому даже ни капельки сожаления нет.
Охуеть.
Духи какие здесь нашел, блять, вкусные, нахуй, пиздец. У меня квартира целая в кармане лежит.
Да. Да. Все бери. Что нужно?
Так, только из кожи слезает.
Дома грабим, ебаный в рот, чтобы пожрать, блядь.
И вот нахуй говорят, что он мирный.
Это называется 21 рожа на теле. У меня на глазах, короче. Дали плен.
Дома грабим, ебаный в рот, чтобы пожрать, блядь.
А почему ты говоришь, что ты принимал участие? Давай там. Украинский баб насилуют, да. Да. Чуть говори, понятно?
Говори, бля.
Все магазины грабим.
Серебра нового.
Дома грабим, ебаный в рот, чтобы пожрать, блядь.
А что нас по новостям?
Мародерить ездил. Мародерить.
Так же только из кожи слезает.
Лучше они ее нахуй распределяют.
На всех пальцах.
Она еще лежит, дернулась. Блять, короче, в голове дырка.
Охуеть.
У меня на глазах,
блядь, позвали еще нахуй, он еще раз стрельнул, она еще лежит.
дали плен.
Он еще раз, все, я говорю, да. Я говорю,
Да.
Этого мужика река забили.
Их нахуй деньги, всех перестрелял. Нахуй насиловал, блядь.
Представляешь, да, сколько там должно быть ударов, сколько всего должно быть?
Дома грабим, ебаный в рот, чтобы пожрать, блядь.
Да какой русский человек не сопрет?
Я на глазах, короче.
Куда ездил?
Мародерить ездил.
Дали плен.
Мародерить.
Да. Так, ты давай там. Украинских баб насилуют, да.
Еще знаешь, какие пути?
Так, давай. Украинских баб.
У меня на глазах, короче, пытали пленных.
Дома грабим, ёбаный в рот, чтобы пожрать, блядь.
Это так наше.
Сейчас связь наладили, устанавливаем полный осмотр, выбираем нахуй телефоны, у нас пацаны, ебать, с 13-ми ходят, короче, мучим
Поэтому даже ни капельки сожаления нет. А он сидит, вот он все дома нахер танками разъебашил. Который я вам. Блин, взять.
Так, ты давай там. Украинских баб насилуют, да. Мне ничего не говори, понятно?
Поэтому даже ни капельки сожаления нет.
Мне их не жалко.
Поэтому даже ни капельки сожаления нет.
Мне их не жалко.
Похуй, что там написано у них, дети, не дети, хуярь всех. Алло.
Да, слышу, сын. А ты не можешь у кого-нибудь из местных забрать телефон и звонить мне каждый день, нет?
Еще знаешь, какие пытки я видел?
Так, ты давай там. Украинских баб насилуют, да.
У нас люк в команде есть, говорит, прям люк открывай, вставай и хуярь.
Да.
Охуеть. Можно, да?
Да, разрешаю.
Это так наше.
Только предохраняй.
Алло, ты тут?
А нам похуй, блядь, мне Леха, ну, командир дал добро, блядь, шмаляй. У меня в команде.
Не знаю.
Так, ты
Еще
давай
знаешь,
там.
какие пытки?
Украинских баб насилуют, да. Мне ничего не говори.
Какой человек насиловал 14-летний. Ну какой русский человек не сопрет ничего, ты чё?
Куда ездил?
Мародерить ездил.
Куда?
Мародерить.
Поэтому даже ни капельки сожаления нет.
Так.
Теперь у тебя есть 2 нортовых манто. У Даши есть это самое.
Ну какой русский человек не сопрет ничего, ты чё?
Хорошо, уже, но не МБ, не... Я тебе говорю, ты просто...
Ой, да.
Да я заебался.
Дали пленных.
Я боюсь, пиздец. Дома грабим, ёбаный в рот, чтобы пожрать, блядь.
А почему ты говоришь, что ты принимал участие? Давай там. Украинских баб насилуют, да. Да. Ничего не говори, понятно?
Дома грабили, курицу.
Так, чтобы только поймали
Охуеть.
Этого мужика приказа.
Потому что иначе я хуй его знаю.
Когда же они уже там нахуй успокоятся, ебаный хуруй? Блядь, ебать их камень. Когда же они, сука, там угомонятся, хохляньки ебаные?
Блять, сука, и вот так всю ночь.
Так ты хотел туда, на войну, вот и поехал.
Все настолько вкусное, нахуй, ебать. Мы тут мороженка угощали, ебать, она такая охуенная, нахуй.
Охуеть.
Как вы выживаете? Ну, просто в погребах есть мародерство.
Еще знаешь, какие пути? Еще он пошел ему в спину. Поэтому даже ни капельки сожаления нет.
Thank you for your attention. Thank you for taking the time, Madam President, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Pinchuk. We will now continue with my colleague Amanda Paul, who will start the conference in 1-2 minutes after we change the setup. Thank you very much.
working. So, okay, yeah, I think it's working now. Okay, so thank you everybody for staying. We're now going to move to the second part of this event. First of all, I would like to thank the mission of Ukraine to the EU and the other Ukrainian partners for inviting the EPC to partner with them for this event. I think it was very difficult to watch this film that we just saw, to see the brutal, disgusting war crimes and crimes against humanity that have been carried out in Ukraine against innocent civilians. It's so important that Russians, all Russians who are in any way involved in these crimes, pay for this, that justice is served. I think the Russians believe that they are untouchable, that nothing will happen to them. And why do they think like that? They think like that because for decades and even longer, they have gotten away with carrying out war crimes and have paid no price for it. So it has to end. It is time for Russia to pay the price. It is time for those responsible to be sentenced and put into prison and stay there hopefully for a very long time, in some cases for the rest of their entire lives. So in this session, we are going to be digging down into different issues. We're going to be looking at the war crimes themselves that have been taking place and continue to take place in Ukraine by people working in the field and other experts. We're going to be looking at the processes that are underway to actually document these crimes, to have those responsible charged, both from the side of Ukraine, but also the side of the international community. It's not going to be an easy process, but it's a process that needs to be done, and there needs to be 101% political commitment from everybody involved to make sure that justice is done. So we have quite a few speakers here, all of them very interesting and important. So I want to start with Ukraine's Prosecutor General, Andriy Kostin. I hope that he is here. I can't see his picture. Is Mr. Kostin online? Yes, he is. He is? Okay, very good. So welcome very much, Prosecutor General. It's a great pleasure to have you with us today. Now, what I would like to ask you is, can you share with us more details about the scale of the war crimes? Can we also talk about genocide in this sense? How is Ukraine investigating them? How many cases are being dealt with at the current time? And how are you coordinating this process? And what is the role of other international actors? Sorry to throw so many questions at you, but I give you the floor.
Thank you for inviting me to speak today. I think that everyone in today's audience shares the belief that democratic societies are based on justice, accountability, and the rule of law. Core international crimes and gross human rights and international humanitarian law violations undermine this belief and threaten international peace and security. Therefore, responding to international crimes goes beyond one particular state and is our common responsibility. From 2014, Ukraine is fighting for its territorial integrity and lives of its people. From February 24th, the world is witnessing unprecedented military aggression, kinds of which Europe has not experienced since the Second World War. Violations by Russian armed forces and their proxies are colossal in their scale and nature. And we have documented such barbaric tactics of waging war as summary executions, torture, sexual violence, forced deportation, shelling of urban areas, including hospitals, schools, kindergartens, and residential buildings. These methods are chosen to inflict unimaginable terror and suffering to Ukrainians and to break our resistance. As of today, we have documented over 7,000 crimes committed in connection with the Russian aggression. They resulted in the death of over 7,000 people, including 382 children. This includes the number of deaths in excludes the number of deaths in occupied territories like in Mariupol, where, according to estimates, tens of thousands perished. Over 40,000 objects of civilian and critical infrastructure have been destroyed or seriously damaged by barbaric actions of Russia. Despite these, state institutions, including the law enforcement agencies, are functioning steadily and upholding law and order in the country. Even though we have much on our agenda, investigation and prosecution of international crimes remains top priority for our office. From the outset of Russian aggression, prosecutors have been at the forefront of investigations, coordinating domestic and international efforts. To date, we are investigating close to 32,000 instances of war crimes. 160 individuals have been charged as suspects, including 15 Russian prisoners of war. 21 people have been indicted and case filed, forwarded to courts for such crimes as indiscriminate shelling, attacks on civilian objects, brutal treatment of civilians, intentional murders, rape and other forms of sexual violence, etc. Moreover, 9 individuals are already convicted. Ukraine has been able to achieve such a progress in investigation and prosecution due to diligent work of the law enforcement agencies along with the support from our international partners. Therefore, only working in synergy will allow us to achieve justice and accountability. In this regard, we see the investigations ongoing in the format of Joint Investigative Team for the international crimes committed in Ukraine and the assistance rendered on the ground as crucial. As we recently discussed with President of Eurojust, Ladislav Hamran, it is pivotal to further accelerate our efforts in this framework. Against this background, I welcome the interest of more countries to join this format. I'm convinced that Joint Investigation Team members meeting in coming October will allow us to discuss this as well as other topics regarding enhancing effectivity of our efforts more in details. Moreover, the participation of the International Criminal Court in this process contributes to the streamlining of accountability efforts, both on domestic as well as international levels. We see the court as the main protagonist of justice on international plane. Prosecutor Khan has already visited Ukraine on 3 occasions, and his team has been present on the ground. So they have a clear understanding of the situation. We have quite a hefty agenda of cooperation, which we are currently attending to, and hopefully in the nearest future, the outcomes of our efforts will bring fruits. Ukraine will do maximum to facilitate the effective work of the ICC. Very important also is the work of the Atrocity Crimes Advisory Group. Our office is already benefiting from the support and the expertise provided through the mobile justice teams. Having foreign experts on the ground who give targeted advice to prosecutors is a game changer. Such cooperation further expedites investigative process in line with the best international practices. And finally, I want to draw your attention to 2 critical questions. First is the need to ensure accountability for the crime of aggression, the gravest of international crimes. International Criminal Court cannot investigate this crime due to legal constraints. However, we cannot leave it go unpunished. Therefore, the creation of a special international tribunal to investigate and punish the crime of aggression is a central issue for Ukraine. Such a consensus of the world community will send a powerful message that we shall not leave unattended blatant violation of the very tenets of the international world order. Second, more straightforward action is needed not only to seize, but to confiscate assets of military and political elite of Russia, as well as oligarchs located abroad. These individuals should see the consequences of their actions. Confiscation of their assets for the benefit of Ukrainian people and the reconstruction of Ukraine is the only logical and adequate measure. Russian aggression has far-reaching consequences for Ukraine, for Europe, and for the whole world. Russia challenged the current world order by yet again attempting to redraw borders by force. We should not allow this. Therefore, it's essential to secure justice and uphold accountability. We in Ukraine have still much to do in terms of enhancing the prosecution of war crimes, including optimizing the legislative framework, enhancing IT solutions, the rational and coherent prioritization of war crimes investigations, as well as continuous capacity development of the staff. At the same time, we should work hand in hand and streamline our domestic and international accountability efforts to ensure that international community provides adequate response to mass violations of international law that are taking place in Ukraine. If we do not want to undermine the world order, we need to act now and capably, and we need to act together. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Prosecutor General. I know that you have to leave us, but before you go, I want to ask the audience here if there are any questions that we can put to you. So does anybody have a question for the Prosecutor General? I don't see any hands coming up. Okay. Thank you very much for this really important contribution. I think you were very clear and outlined, the priorities that you see in your work going forward. And I do agree with you, everybody needs to be working together for the same result and as soon as possible. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you in another event on this topic with progress having been made. So I now want to see whether Mr. Harmer has joined us. I don't see him yet on the screen. I hope that he will still be coming. Okay, so I'm going to move to the next speaker on our program, Ms. Alexandra Matviachuk, who's chairman of the Center for Liberties in Ukraine. Your organization is a civil society organization, so you've been very active on the ground on this issue, you and your team. So could we hear from you how you see, or what can you say about how you view the situation and the role of civil society in this process?
Thank you very much for providing. I'm a human rights lawyer, and for over 20 years I have been defending human rights. From 2014, I have been documenting war crimes. And since Russian full-scale invasion, we have united dozens of civil organizations into the Tribunal for Putin initiative. Only in 6 months of Russian aggression, jointly we have documented over 17,000 criminal episodes. 17,000, it's an enormous amount of crimes, but it's still only a tip of iceberg. And this is the reason why I can confidently assert the following. First, Russia uses war crimes as the methods of warfare. Russia attempts to break people resistance and occupy Ukraine by means of what I call the immense pain of civilian people. This is a constant policy of the Russian leadership. Russian military intentionally ruined residential dwellings, churches, hospitals, schools, They apply indiscriminate weapons in densely populated areas. Russia facilitates filtration camp systems and commit massive deportations of Ukrainian population. Russian army persecutes and terrorizes civilians, aiming to keep its control over the occupied territories, and they intentionally exterminate local active people, mayors, journalists, activists, lawyers, volunteers, priests, and others. Second, these atrocities in Ukraine is a consequence of the impunity for the previous crimes which Putin's regime committed. Russia has been using war as a tool of achieving its geopolitical interests, and for decades, Russian military have been committed war crimes in Moldova, Georgia, Syria, Mali, Libya, and other countries. They have never been held accountable for this, and Russians are convinced that they are free to do anything they want. I have interviewed more than 100 of civilians who survived in captivity, and they told me that they had been beaten, raped, caged in wooden boxes, their limbs had been cut off, electricity had been sent through their genitals. One woman told me how her eye had been turned out with a spoon. Third, the national legal system of Ukraine is facing a difficult challenge. As we heard recently, the Office of Prosecutor General has opened over 32,000 criminal proceedings. And it's clear that even the world's most powerful legal system wouldn't be able to cope with such a great number of crimes during the war. We cannot lord this task over the International Criminal Court. ICC investigations are extremely important, but the court focuses only at the top officials and limits itself only to several selected cases. Investigation of the rest of dozens of thousands of criminal proceedings and their perpetrators remains with the responsibility of Ukrainian investigative and court authorities. And thus, I want to bring to our discussion the extremely acute question, how we will have to ensure justice for numerous thousands of war crime victims. I think that together we have to develop the whole justice strategy, and the strategy has included several directions to intensify the cooperation with International Criminal Court and ratify Rome Statute, to strengthen the ability of national legal system of Ukraine, to develop the potential of joint investigation team to secure evidence directly in Ukraine, and to invent additional mechanisms such as international tribunal and others mechanisms to hold accountable all people who have committed these crimes, as well as Putin and the rest of the senior political leadership and military high command of Russian Federation. This war has a distinct value dimension. I work with people directly, and I know it. This is not the war of two countries. This is the war of two systems, authoritarianism and democracy. And Putin is attempting to convince that freedom, democracy, and the rule of law are the fake values, and they are unable to protect anyone in this war. He asserts that only physical force matters. We will win this war in dimension of value when we hold Russian war criminals accountable, and thus we will prove that rule of law is effective and justice is possible, even though delay in time. Thank you.
Alexandra, could you just elaborate perhaps on the role of civil society, what civil society is doing on the ground and why it's so important and why they need to have, let's say, perhaps more international support, including finance for the job that they are doing?
Now we work on two levels. First, as I mentioned, we documented war crimes in the ground, and we managed to launch the regional network where each regional team are responsible for the concrete oblasts. In our Tribunal for Putin initiative, we had a joint methodology and joint database of 17,000 of criminal episodes, and we have an ambitious goal to put in this database each criminal episodes which was committed in the smallest villages in each oblast since 24 February this year, which appeared under Russian attack. But second level is a question which I just put into the audience, because we are not historians, we are human rights defenders. And when we documented testimonies of victims of the war, we know for sure that they need justice. And we see that if we will not be able to elaborate this justice strategy, we will not be honest with people with whom we are working, that the justice will be reachable for all victims of war crimes, not only for selected cases. And this is a second level in which civil society needs support. And I think first and foremost, not financial support for civil society, but political support. Because I personally visited several countries when I first left Kiev in May this year. I was in several countries and had meetings with politicians, with diplomats, with leading journalists, with think tanks, and our partner human rights organizations. And I see the demand for peace. I don't see the demand for justice. I think we have to put this demand on the table. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I now want to move to our next speaker, to Anton Kornievich, if you don't mind coming over here. You're the special ambassador in the Foreign Ministry responsible for the special tribunal. So you have a huge task, I believe. So please, could you elaborate the steps that you're taking, the priorities, how far you've got to achieve this goal?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everybody, dear colleagues. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here today on this really very important event of opening such an important exhibition about Russian war crimes and other crimes committed in Ukraine, here in the center of Europe. When I saw this film for the first time in Kiev, it was, you know, I knew about all these facts, of course, because I live and work in Kiev. And I talk every day with people from different regions. But it was really very hard to see this and to listen to this ugly speeches of perpetrators of these crimes, and understanding that for them this is something normal, this is how they do things, and this is actually how Russia wages war. It wages war by committing atrocity crimes. This is Russian war strategy, I'm sure of that. And this is not the notion which came to the place right now. Russia has done this for centuries, I'm sure. So thanks so much for the organizers of today's event and for ability to talk about the accountability issues, and in particular the issue which I think is one of the crucial when we talk about the comprehensive system of accountability for the violations of international law, including committing of gravest international crimes by Russia and its citizens in and against Ukraine. This is the issue of special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. I also represent Ukraine in our new case to the ICJ, allegations of genocide, in which we do have this very well structured and taxed and prepared order of 16th of March, of which Madam President was talking. And working as a lawyer throughout all these years since the beginning of the aggression in 2014, I may say that we really use all the possible mechanisms and instruments to bring Russia and its citizens to accountability, both at a state level and at individual level. But we see that these mechanisms and instruments are not enough. So the system is not finished. The architecture is not enough. So that is why Ukraine currently suggests the establishment of two mechanisms. The one is a compensation commission for the losses which occurred due to the Russian aggression against Ukraine. This is another topic, but also very important. And of course, the establishment of the special tribunal. So we do consider that making these two new mechanisms possible and happen, we will finalize this architecture of international accountability instruments and mechanisms, and we will have this comprehensive accountability system. I think that concerning the special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine, Mr. Yermak, Mr. Prime Minister, and Mr. Prosecutor General were talking a lot, and this is good because this is really one of the priorities for our government. And it is very important for us, as Madam President was saying, that she is ready and that the European Parliament is ready to support and move forward with support of this idea. So the idea is really easy when we talk about legal side. There is one crime which cannot be taken into jurisdiction of any available international court or tribunal, the crime of aggression. All the others, crime of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, they do have the ICC, which can work with these crimes under the relevant investigation of the situation in Ukraine. So the question really is rather simple. Whether we go and try, when I say we, I mean of course international community, whether we go and try to prosecute perpetrators of the crime of aggression against Ukraine, or we leave this crime without any answer. And if we leave this crime without any answer, due to the fact that this is the biggest aggression in Europe since 1945, as very rightly Mr. Chief of Staff and other colleagues were saying, then I think we need to tell us frankly that international community is not ready to work with the crime of aggression, and it's a kind of a paper tiger set out in some international treaties and maybe customary law. So the idea is to create a special tribunal which would have in its jurisdiction only one crime, crime of aggression against Ukraine. And we are not inventing a bicycle. We are suggesting this in order to have responsibility for this crime. And if we do this, Vladimir Putin and the members of his troika, clique, government, whatever, will be the number 2 after Nazis who will be tried on this continent for the crime of aggression. I do think that historically this is their role. This is what they should face. As of now, from the legal side of the story, we are rather safe and secure and comfortable. We have developed all the relevant legal drafts, all the relevant positions, and we are considering and deliberating and exploring them with our international partners. We do have support of parliamentary assemblies of international organizations, namely very important resolution of European Parliament, 2 resolutions of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, resolution of declaration of Parliamentary Assembly of NATO, resolution of Parliamentary Assembly of OSCE, which every of these resolution calls for the establishment of this special tribunal. Now it is high time to bring this topic, actually what this conference today does, and the opening of the exhibition, to bring this topic from legal sphere to the sphere of attention of decision makers, to the sphere of attention of those who can make this tribunal happen. To make this tribunal happen, it is obvious that Ukraine needs support of international partners, because we cannot establish international tribunal ourselves alone. So this tribunal may be established either on the basis of agreement of Ukraine and international organization, and here I think EU or Council of Europe or UN can be of course of importance and support, or on the basis of multilateral treaty between Ukraine and other states. Of course, there are and there will be some legal issues which we will need to tackle. And one of the primary issues is immunities, in particular functional immunities of those who are on top of the tree, in particular of Troika, the head of state, the head of government, and Minister of Foreign Affairs, but maybe some more. But what is important and what is crucial, the crime of aggression is the only crime in international law which leads directly to the top, so which is actually a leadership crime. So only those who were in position to give orders to start the war of aggression may be tried for committing the crime of aggression. And that is why after the establishment of the special tribunal, we are sure that it will not need a lot of time for the tribunal to prepare indictments, arrest warrants, and all the other things. Crime of aggression is much easier to prove than the war crimes or crimes against humanity, and especially when we talk about particular war crime committed in Bucha and trying to satisfy all the chain of custody to Kremlin or to Lubyanka or to whatever. This might take a lot of time and efforts. Crime of aggression goes directly to these top perpetrators. And I'm sure that actually indictments and arrest warrants for the leaders of the Russian Federation, maybe not only of Russian Federation, maybe of other states who commit aggression against Ukraine. There is at least one other state. I think that this really may be a game changer, because it will be the thing where these people are claimed and labeled as alleged criminals, not only by some declarations or sayings, but by concrete legal documents. So that is why I do believe that, of course, I'm really happy that today we have this discussion here in Brussels. I really believe that establishing of this mechanism is one of the key issues and one of the key priorities which should be on our agenda. And I'm sure that it's a right moment to show that the crime of aggression matters and that the crime of aggression really exists in international law, and that it is a crime which is not only written down, but which can bring perpetrators to responsibility. The last but not least, I would like to mention that we are not competing with the International Criminal Court. I think that from statements today by our leadership and by our Prosecutor General, you heard that we deeply value all the things which the ICC does. We are effectively cooperating with the International Criminal Court. We do have this exchange of information. Verkhovna Rada, the Parliament of Ukraine, has adopted amendments to the Criminal Procedural Code of Ukraine, which make cooperation with the ICC more flexible and more effective. So this is not competing, this is not impeding jurisdiction of primary international criminal jurisdictional body. This is just because ICC cannot work with this crime and will not be able to do that. And we believe that in our situation, if we create this tribunal, we might fill the gaps which existed since 2014, and we can finally see how these people who wage this war in Russia, who sit in Kremlin and in other places and make these orders to attack our cities, to kill our civilians, to use missiles against the places of inhabitants of civilian population, that these persons are labeled by International Criminal Tribunal as alleged international criminals. I think that this is one of our targets. This is my personal goal, and I think that we will do all that we can in order to make this happen, and we really count on your support, because we cannot do this alone. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please take the seat. I was just going to ask you an additional question, because from what you said, I mean, theoretically speaking, it sounds like this tribunal could be, created quite rapidly if there's political will. I mean, you're doing the rounds, talking to different, governments, I mean, I guess in Europe, in the United States. Do you see already a huge amount of political will to move forward with this, or are there some obstacles?
Thank you for this question. Well, of course, we do talk with our colleagues and partners in many countries, in many organizations, and I would say that we really have support from many of them in relation to the idea of establishment of this tribunal. Now it looks like that really European states are more active in this, but we are not limited to, and we are happy to talk with everybody and with countries from different continents. And I think that really this is a key issue, to put this into political agenda and to get political will. Because as soon as this is done, the things will really go smoother and more softly. And I think that we shouldn't think that looking into eyes of Russian politicians or negotiating peace for whatever price may be a good strategy. It's not. That guys are not the ones who will do that. we had a lot of agreements since 2014. Where they are all now. So I do believe that making them real international criminals, first of all, makes their place in history, and the second, may be the game changer for the situation itself. So I do think that talking with our international colleagues and partners, we may get and we will get the necessary support of the idea, but of course it is very important to use each and every possibility to bring this issue to the attention of the key decision makers, both in Europe and in other regions.
Thank you very much. I now move to our next speaker. We're staying more or less on the same topic. So welcome Antoine Garapon, who's an honorary magistrate and professor at Sciences Po Law School in Paris. Welcome to you. So it would be great if you could share your views on how you see the importance of this international tribunal for Ukraine, and what do you see as the main challenges to its creation?
Okay.
Thank you very much for this invitation, and sorry, Ambassador, I'm not a politician, so I fully support the setting up of such a court, because it's fully legitimate. But unfortunately, and I know that my own country, I'm ashamed to say, is one of the more reluctant today for this tribunal. But anyway, I'd like, because I was extremely impressed by what I saw and I learned today in these couple of hours, and I'd like, as an academic, to do a bit of history. My point is that every major war in Europe ended in a court. So World War I ended in the section 226, the idea, and I may recall the very expression of the Versailles Treaty. It said that the emperor should be tried for a supreme offense against international morality and the sanctity of treaties. And then after, and this court never went out because of the Netherlands, we didn't surrender the emperor. But another system, one of the first systems of collective security through Society of Nations appeared. Then World War II, Nuremberg trial, and the system of collective security through UN. And the end of Cold War. Cold War, it's a Rome Treaty. And before Rome Treaty, there was two international tribunals, the International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia and for Rwanda. And what was the idea of the Rome Treaty? It was the idea of complementarity. It means every free people must give help to, for judging and bringing to trial international criminals. What I learned today is that we are entering a new era. And already, actually, we already entered this era, but it was in Syria. And we didn't pay attention to what was happening in Syria. What was happening, it was a new strategy, a new kind of war, targeting civilians and making civil populations as a weapon of mass destruction, sending millions of people in Europe in order to destabilize Western Europe. And, but we didn't pay attention. And actually, I can speak from the French public opinion, but I think it's the same for... We didn't understand what happened in Syria, and we still do not understand what happened in Ukraine. In terms of, we think it's, yes, okay, it's a very old kind of war. It's a war of conquest by an imperial power. But it's not that. It's a new war And Alexandra made it very well when she said it was not a war between two countries, but a war between two systems. And what happens today is that, as far as I can understand, Ukraine is inventing a new system for a new era. And I have a lot of arguments to say that. I think we are, what the general prosecutor explained to us, just explained, is that we are a step further after complementarity. We are in a work together. We are in joint investigating units. And a very active role of civil society because of the strategy which is the same and which we, perhaps the media in the West do not explain very clearly what happens in Ukraine. We are interested in the bombing of Mariupol, we are interested in some photos, but we can't understand. We cannot decrypt what they know the English for, you know, understand fully what happens. So we are witnessing a new kind of war in a new era because we have now a lot of pieces of evidence through IT. And I was very impressed when the prosecutor said that he already investigated 32,000 crimes. It never happened in the past. It means that the war is a huge amount of crimes. It's totally new, according to the standards. For example, the mobile justice teams for a judge as me, it's something judges is judging in courts. And the confiscation of asset, perhaps you don't, it's a very new approach of crimes, very new. So my point is that there is no support, not enough support from the West, because we don't really understand what happens, because it's a new world. And we should, obviously. And we have something to learn, I think, from you. And perhaps before learning something from you, we have to think together what is happening today. And it would be perhaps the preamble to much heavier support from our civil societies. They think in terms of gas, energy, and a war which is extremely worrying, but it's an old war. I think they didn't get exactly. But and I'm really impressed, and I'm sure that there is a work before asking support again, a work to do to understanding together what happens. Thank you.
But is it also not a case of disinformation and propaganda?
Yeah.
I mean, for societies in Europe are inundated with propaganda, or perhaps the issue isn't, flagged up enough by governments, television stations, or whatnot. I mean, Ukraine's already started to disappear a bit from the agenda here. I know from watching the BBC News that it's dropped way down. So there needs to be new mechanisms where the issue returns to the headlines, but in particular this issue of the war of aggression against Ukrainian civilians needs to be much more flagged up to get much more public attention.
But because it's about the war of aggression is a very old crime, actually, because it's the old right of conquest, and it was not a crime; it was a right for a sovereign to conquest the neighbor if he was stronger than him. There is a mixture of something old and something extremely new. And something, yes, I fully agree. I think we don't speak correctly of Ukraine, and now in the West is the winter, the problem of energy, the tensions are over the middle classes, which is extremely dangerous for our democracies, because it's I think it's part of the strategy. I would say, as a lawyer, I worked a lot on international crimes. I think that the crimes I saw and you spoke about this afternoon are quite new. They are not assimilated. It's difficult to assimilate them to only war crimes. It's more than that. It's more than that. They are not crimes against humanity in terms of policy against a group, a minority. No, it's different. Which should be characterized, I think, more precisely.
Okay, thank you very much for your intervention. I'm not sure whether we have Jeffrey Nice online or not. He was there before, but he seems to have disappeared.
I'm here now.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm guessing that you've been listening to the previous part of the discussion, so it would be interesting to hear from you. I mean, given your previous experience with regard to the Milosevic case, how do you see the process of trying to Russia's top political leadership? I mean, you have experience in the hurdles and obstacles that are on the path. So what can you share with us from your good experience in this respect?
Thank you very much. I have relatively little to say because I have heard with great interest and been heartened by what I've heard from Mr. Kostin and others. I think the film show demonstrated a very important point. That is that delay in recording a just decision against Putin and others for the crimes being committed is not necessary nor appropriate. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Experience from the Milosevic trial goes back to processes that started over 20 years ago and must properly be regarded as experimental then and experimental now. And in particular, it's very important for people to realize that the system of trial that was imposed, the English, American, Australian system, was not imposed for any good reason. It was imposed as an act of cultural imperialism, is quite probably not the best system for trying this type of crime, is overlong and very, very much too expensive. Now, of course, trial in Ukraine is, I believe, under a different system and seems to be much more efficient. And I would urge consideration of every efficiency that you can bring about, because trials that last 25 years, 10 years per trial sometimes, are no use to anyone in many ways, and I'll come back to that in a minute. I was particularly pleased to see that the Prosecutor General spoke of relying on assistance given and advice given by the international community. And that fits very much with something that emerged for me as a result of both the Yugoslav trials, but also other work that I have done in civil society since. And that is the determination of criminality in this dreadful war is both the responsibility and the privilege of Ukraine to deal with. In my view, everything possible in the accountability process, whether in your own laws, even in the new tribunal which may be established, and by any other mechanism, who knows, some people's process that might be associated, is not only best done, it is properly done within Ukraine, by Ukrainians, and in the Ukrainian language, with assistance, of course, coming from internationals if you need it. And my goodness, they're going to be prepared to give it, because Ukraine finds itself sitting on high peaks of moral authority, both in respect of conduct of the war, in the leadership of its president, and indeed in the way it has tried people, including its own misconduct in the war. So those are two of the primary lessons I think I draw from my own experience. They seem unnecessary because in many ways they seem to have been accepted or adopted without anybody having to urge it on you. As to the special tribunal for aggression, which I completely understand is desirable and may be a very good idea, I would add just one comment from my experience in the Milosevic and other trials. Simplicity over complexity is always desirable, not least because it brings matters to a conclusion swiftly, but it also avoids argument that is both expensive in time and dangerous in terms of what legacy may be left. So yes, a good idea, the tribunal, but why not think of focusing wherever Ukraine can on crimes against humanity? Because as I suggested and have suggested before, simply from looking at that film, those crimes against Putin and his immediate colleagues in leadership are provable in a very short space of time indeed. And don't be misled by lawyers who will say things are complicated. Of course, you've got to get evidence prepared and presented as well as can be. But sometimes, you know, lawyers who benefit from complexity and length of trials should be listened to with a rather cautious ear. The last point I'd like to make before, as I can see the time and you'll no doubt want to open the debate up to other questions. It is absolutely essential, whatever happens to all the other thousands of trials, and that's a long and distant process, maybe with intervening decisions, whatever happens to those, the leadership must, as I said at the beginning, be tried and be tried very swiftly and to a final, incontrovertible result. Why do I say that? For two reasons. First, the obvious one about the Second World War. As it happens, total victory determined who was the good guy and who was the extremely bad guy. But the Nuremberg trials, which took a year and were done by the end of whatever it was, 1946, rubber stamped that. And the rest of us in Europe never had to think about the war again. And we never did. We were able to move forward. Contrast that with what has happened to another good guy, similar to yourselves, namely Bosnia and the Bosnian Muslims. There's no doubt they were blameless. But as a result of uncertainty as to the position of the leadership, because there was no leadership trial, as a result of the 10, 20-year trials about Srebrenica and other areas where counter-narratives, however unrealistic, have been given airtime, the Bosnian Muslims are facing quite unfairly the risk of rising moral equivalence at the hands of Serbia and the Serbs. And in Ukraine, and this reflects things we have already started to hear outside Ukraine, this risk of moral equivalence is likely to happen. And it has to be said, as Mr. Khan, who I think is not with us today, although I was rather hoping he might be, if he were to issue or announce that he will issue an indictment against Putin now, that would do a great deal to restrict the possibility for moral equivalence ever being asked for. On top of all this, having Putin tried and avoiding some horrible compromise at the end of this war where he's specifically allowed not to be tried, and given the liberty that the Kaiser enjoyed after World War I of living in the Netherlands, if he is tried, then the legal process will be doing, apart from by bringing retribution, and bringing some solace to victims, it will do the one thing that just maybe international or national trials of war crimes can do, which is to deter others. We have no idea what would have happened with Nazi Germany if the Kaiser had been tried and convicted, but just maybe something. And although it can be said that the trial of the Nazi leaders didn't stop, for example, Pol Pot or even Milosevic, smaller scale, though that all was, only by conviction, by absolute determination of culpability and trying someone until conviction and punishment made deterrence work. And that is in the interest of all of us. Thank you.
To join me here, Vadim Toka and Sergei Anokin. These two guys, you know, are heroes, they're brave, they've lived through the experience of war crimes, of the crime of aggression, and they're sitting here and they're going to tell us their stories, how they lived through that and what they saw. So I want to give the floor first to Vadim, who's head of the Makarev commune.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have come here from Ukraine. I have come here from that other world that you have seen on this video material on this big screen behind me. It is very difficult to speak. It is very difficult to talk about what the Russians have done in Ukraine and in our territory. I am a head of a small town not far from Kiev, and let me talk about the crimes I have witnessed myself as I was there during the military aggression. Over a very short span of time, over a span of 34 days, when our territory was suffering from an active combat zone of combat activities, the Russian soldiers killed 238 civilians. 6 of them were children. It is very painful for me to talk about it. It's very difficult for me to recollect those facts, because at that time my colleague was killed. It was at that time that a person was killed whom I worked with. She and her entire family was tortured and subsequently killed. She used to work in my administration. She and her husband were murdered. We have evidence of rapes with the subsequent murder of those girls who were raped. We have knowledge of huge losses sustained by the community and huge destruction, rate of destruction. We, as the community, we, as the population of Ukraine, we demand is the correct word, we demand that every single criminal is brought to justice by the adequate legal system, and together with this, I understand that perhaps legally speaking it would be difficult to indict the head of the Russian state, the terrorist state, and perhaps it would be difficult to convict him of committing specific crimes in my specific community. Maybe I am wrong. However, still, I do believe that it is important to establish a special tribunal that would prosecute the crimes and that would prosecute the aggression that those acts of aggression that have led to so numerous crimes committed in so many places, including my own community not far from Kiev. I think that this should be prosecuted by that tribunal. I do hope that we will be capable of doing that, regardless of the fact that, as far as information space in Europe is concerned, less is being talked about Ukraine. But we still need to remember about the reality we live in. 3,000 families in my community are not thinking about the upcoming winter. They're thinking about where to stay overnight today, where to stay overnight tomorrow. They do not know what awaits for them when the winter season comes, because these people do not have homes. These people do not have basic belongings that are necessary just to live. They do not have any means for living. Therefore, we call on the world to unite around this issue, so as no ruler of any single country would even think of repeating the crimes that have been committed in my small community and in my big country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vadim, for sharing your experience, what you've gone through, and for the suggestions that you've made. I now want to hand over to Sergei, who is the pastor of Bethany Evangelical Christian Baptist Church in Bucha. And we know Bucha was all over the news for the horrendous crimes against aggression and war crimes that were carried out there. So I'm very thankful to have you with us today as well, to share what you went through, what you saw, and to give us your perspective on what you expect to happen to the Russians in terms of serving justice for this.
Hello. My name is Sergei. I'm the pastor of the Baptist Church in Bucha. I have 3 children and 3 adopted children, so I have a big family. And the first day of the war, we have chance to leave Bucha and be safe. But in our town, we have building and we have basement and building. So we propose people to stay in our basement to protect themselves. So in the first day, we have 50 people over there. And the end, we was there 15 days in the basement and 8 days without electricity. And we have, in the end, 170 people inside. So it's 30 kids and pregnant girl and wheelchair and lots of old people. So, and we feed them. We were looking for the food, and we was out and searching, like we're going to different places and finding food. So we are facing with the Russian. And 6th of March, Russian troops came to the basement, to our basement, and was gun, with everything. So, and they started screaming and cursing, and kids was there. My kids was there too, and my young girl, she's 4 years old. She was on the hand of my wife, and there was something, I don't know, there was lots of people, dead bodies around the Bucha, and in that time when we was there, they already started kill people. and I saw dead bodies, and people wear black dress, black clothes. And when the Russian came to the basement, they say, if you will wear black, we will shoot you. If you will go out, we will shoot you. If you will searching for the food, we will shoot you. And my little girl, she dressed pink dress, and she started crying and asked like, don't kill me because I'm in a pink, I'm in a pink. So it was very stressful for the people who was there. And for right now, it's, we forget a lot, but you know, I understand how it's worked. When the war started in Ukraine in 2014, we was very scared, and we lots of time we heard the news, and we was worried. But when the time gone, we start forget about everything. And it's happened right now in Europe. It's happened right now everywhere. People start forget about war because it's already half year, and they say it's their business. It's not ours. So what I think, yeah, it's important economic. It's important lives. My apartment was destroyed on the second day of the war. My friend called me and say, your apartment burning. The Russian rocket hit the house, and I say, no, it's impossible. And he said, yes. He showed me the picture and video how my apartment was burned. And everything what I have was there. Everything what I collect, my pictures, everything was there. And I was thinking like, what the most important in my life. It's my life, not what I have, like money or house, my life. So what Russians do right now in Ukraine, they take in our lives. We can lose money, we can lose something, but the most important, what God gave, it's life. And we need to protect this. And how can we do this without punish people who is doing this right now?
Thank you. Is it still on? Yeah. Thank you, Sergei, for sharing your views, for sharing what these, disgusting animals, I mean, maybe animal is too much of a nice word for Russians, what these brutal, murdering aggressors have done to you, your family, your friends. I mean, I know it must be very difficult for you to sit here and talk about this. So thank you again for coming, because it's very brave. So I want to now open the floor to questions if there are any. I mean, it's been quite a long and intense discussion. Unfortunately, I don't think the online audience is able to ask questions, but if there's any questions in the room, this is the moment to ask them. If not, then I would have to draw this meeting to an end, and that looks to be the case. I want to thank the speakers very much for coming here today and sharing their thoughts and ideas on this really important topic, because honestly, I can't think of many topics that are more important than this one. What's going on in Ukraine beggars belief, as we would say in English, and this war of aggression, the war crimes, and every other label we put on it needs to be addressed. And as we've heard from our speakers, it needs to be addressed as quickly as possible. And as we heard from, Mr. Nis, it can be done quite quickly if there is sufficient political will. Obviously, the political will is there from the side of Ukrainians. We need to see the equivalent political will from the side of the international community, the West, all the partners, because we all want to see the Russians punished for what they have done in Ukraine, but also for what they've done before this in Syria, in Chechnya, and every other part of the world where the Russian boot has been. There's been these sorts of crimes committed in numerous other occasions, on numerous other times, for which Russia has never paid. They need to pay this time, and the world needs to be focused on making them pay. So once again, thank you to all of our guests from coming here today. As a think tank here in Brussels, the European Policy Centre will be following this issue very closely, continuing to monitor developments, writing about it, and holding activities. It certainly won't be disappearing from our agenda, along with many other issues regarding Ukraine. So thank you again. Slava Ukraini. And until the next time, thank you.